Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever begged for a door to open, only to find silence on the other side? Ever watched everyone else get ahead while you waited unseen, unheard, untouched by the breakthrough you've prayed for? There's a moment in life when you hit the wall, not because you're weak, but because you're human. You planned, prepared, even prayed, but the heavens seemed quiet. Let me ask you, what if the delay wasn't denial? Oh God, what if the silence was sacred? What if the timing you fight is the timing that saves you? Stay with me, because what I'm about to share could change the way you see every unanswered prayer, every closed door, and every long night. We live in a world obsessed with timelines. Graduate by 21, career by 25, married by 30. But what happens when your life doesn't follow the script? We try to write the story ourselves, scheduling God into our calendar. But divine timing refuses to be micromanaged. Sometimes the delay is the delivery, because in the waiting, God is working on something deeper: your heart, your character, your readiness. Silence is painful. You feel forgotten. But trust this: God is never late. He's never early. He's always right on time. There are seasons when God says wait, because He's protecting you from what you're not ready for, or preparing what's not ready for you. A wise heart learns to see God in the slow. Letting go isn't giving up, it's giving over. It's saying, God, I no longer need to understand. I need to trust. Letting go is not weakness. It's the ultimate act of strength, because when your hands are off the wheel, God finally gets to drive. Your job isn't to force the outcome. It's to trust the one who sees the whole picture, not just the snapshot. Trust isn't passive. It's a living, breathing choice. To trust God is to say, even if it takes longer than I hoped, even if I don't get the answers I want, I believe your way is better. That kind of trust transforms you. It anchors you in storms. It gives you peace when logic gives you none. We are planners by nature. From the moment we open our eyes each morning, our minds are often already racing, mapping out the hours, arranging the tasks, forecasting the outcomes. Our lives are filled with schedules, deadlines, and calendars meticulously marked with events and expectations. And in the midst of all this planning, we often carry a silent assumption that life will unfold according to our timing, that if we do everything right, things will happen when we expect them to. But then life interrupts. The job we thought we'd have by now doesn't come through. The relationship we were sure was the one falls apart. The breakthrough we prayed for still hasn't arrived. And we begin to ask questions that reflect our disappointment. Why hasn't it happened yet? What did I do wrong? Why does it feel like God is silent while I wait? This is where divine timing confronts human planning. What we so often miss is that God's timing is not built on our logic or urgency. It is built on His purpose. Our plans are often built around comfort and predictability. But God's plans are woven from a much larger eternal perspective. We see only the moment we're in. God sees the end from the beginning. And in His wisdom, He knows exactly when to open doors, when to close them, and when to hold them shut, until the time is right. Waiting feels painful not because something is wrong, but because we've learned to equate waiting with losing. In our culture, waiting is often viewed as a delay, a detour, or even a failure. But in the economy of heaven, waiting is not wasted time. It is divine preparation. It is a sacred space where transformation often happens. While we're focused on the result, God is focused on the process that will sustain us once the result comes. Think of the farmer who plants a seed. He doesn't dig it up every day to see if it's growing. He knows that the unseen work beneath the soil is essential. The roots must deepen before the sprout breaks the surface. Just like the seed, there are things God is growing in the hidden places of our lives. Things like endurance, humility, and faith. If He gave us what we wanted too soon, it might crush us, potion away with it. It might feed our ego rather than develop our character. It might give us a platform we don't yet have the maturity to stand on. Human planning tries to predict and control. Divine timing invites us to trust and surrender. And there's a freedom that comes when we stop trying to manage outcomes and start believing that God's delay is not His denial. It is His design. The timing we often resist is the timing that ultimately protects us. Consider this. How many times have you looked back on something that once frustrated you, only to later realize that it was actually a blessing? It didn't happen when you wanted it to. We've all had moments where the no or not yet turned out to be one of the greatest mercies in disguise. God sees what we cannot see. He knows what lies ahead, and His wisdom governs the timing of everything. This doesn't mean that waiting is easy. Faith doesn't cancel out emotion. There will be moments of doubt, frustration, and even tears. But those are not signs of weakness. They are evidence that your heart longs deeply for something, and that's okay. God doesn't ask you to pretend the waiting doesn't hurt. He simply asks you to trust Him in it, to believe that He is working even when you can't see it, to rest in the truth that His timing is perfect, even when it feels painfully slow. Though often we think trust is passive, as if trusting God means doing nothing. But it's quite the opposite. Trust is active. It's choosing to get up every morning and keep going, even when the outcome is uncertain. It's continuing to walk by faith, even when your feelings scream otherwise. Trust is the decision to believe that what God has spoken will come to pass, not on your clock, but on His. There is a peace that only comes when we release our timelines and embrace God's. When we stop comparing our journey to others and start focusing on our own lane. When we stop obsessing over when and start remembering who is in control, who is writing the story, and who is holding us through every season. Your plan may be good, but His plan is always better. Your schedule may make sense to you, but His schedule is sacred, intentional, and wise. Divine timing doesn't always give you answers in advance, but it will always give you what you need at the right time. The delays are not just delays, they are developments. The detours are not mistakes, they are mercies. And the silence is not absence, it's the space where God is doing His deepest work. So breathe. Loosen your grip on the plan. Lift your eyes. And remember this truth. God's timing is not just perfect. It is perfect filled. And when it unfolds, you will understand why it had to be that way. and not a moment sooner. Waiting is one of the hardest things we do in life. Not because we are weak, but because we are wired for movement, progress, and resolution. We want answers, we want clarity, we want results, and we want them now. But life, especially a life of faith, doesn't operate on our urgency. It flows on divine wisdom. And often, that wisdom is wrapped in waiting. There's something about waiting that touches the deepest parts of us. The places where our need to understand meets God's call to trust. In waiting, we face not only delay, but the discomfort of not knowing what's next, when it will come, or how it will unfold. And yet, it's in that very place, the still, silent, seemingly stagnant place, that God often plants the most profound wisdom. Waiting is not just a pause in life's motion. It's not simply God putting you on hold. It's a holy classroom. It's where your faith either stretches or shrinks. It's where your roots either deepen or wither. And it's where God reveals truths you can't learn while you're racing ahead. In the waiting, He doesn't just prepare the blessing for you. He prepares you for the blessing. Wisdom doesn't usually come through speed. It comes through stillness. It is forged in silence, in surrender, in the moments when there is nothing left to lean on but the quiet confidence that God knows what He's doing, even if you don't understand it yet. And the deeper truth is this: what feels like a delay is often a divine strategy. You may be praying for something, a breakthrough, a healing, a change, and all you hear is silence. No signs, no shifts, just days turning into weeks and weeks into months. But silence is not absence. Delay is not denial, and unanswered prayers are not ignored prayers. Sometimes what looks like God doing nothing is actually God doing His deepest work. There are things we long for that, if given too early, would do more harm than good. There are dreams we carry that are real and beautiful, but we're not ready for them yet. Or they're not ready for us. Sometimes God slows things down because He loves us too much to let us run ahead unprepared. He holds us in the wait so we can grow not just in patience, but in perspective, in strength, in discernment. Think of the caterpillar in the cocoon. From the outside, it looks like nothing is happening, but on the inside, transformation is taking place. If someone were to cut open that cocoon too soon, thinking they were helping, they would stop the process that gives the butterfly the strength to fly. Likewise, the wait is part of what gives you the capacity to sustain what's coming. We often pray for wisdom, but resist the process that gives birth to it. We ask for maturity, clarity, and understanding, but hope to bypass the discomfort. Yet, the waiting season is rarely wasted. In fact, some of God's greatest wisdom is only found in the space where things don't make sense, where the outcome is unclear, where we're forced to sit in the tension of trust. God's timing isn't just about what happens. It's about who we become in the meantime. And who we become is directly connected to how we choose to walk through the wait. Do we become bitter or better? Do we spiral into self-doubt, or do we anchor deeper into faith? Do we force things out of impatience, or do we rest in the truth that when the time is right, it will happen without striving? There's wisdom in waiting because it teaches us that not everything valuable comes quickly. Some things are slow by design. They are meant to unfold layer by layer. not rushed, but revealed. The world teaches us that faster is better, that we should always be hustling, climbing, achieving, but God teaches us that wisdom is slow, deep, and often hidden in the unseen. When we begin to see waiting as a sacred space rather than a punishment, everything changes. We begin to ask different questions. Instead of when will this be over, we ask, what are you teaching me here? Instead of why is nothing happening, we ask, what is being formed in this stillness? And that is where wisdom begins to grow. Not in the arrival, but in the becoming. Not in the moment of fulfillment, but in the journey toward it. Wisdom teaches us to see differently, to value process over speed, and to find. So if you are in a season of waiting right now, take heart. Don't rush past it. Don't despise it. Lean into it. Ask God to reveal the wisdom that only this season can offer. Trust that what you are learning now, through tears, through questions, through quiet obedience, will one day be the very strength you stand on. Because in the end, God doesn't just want you to reach the destination. He wants you to arrive as someone transformed. Someone who not only holds the answer, but carries a wisdom to steward it well. And that wisdom, it's often hidden, quietly, patiently, beautifully, in the wait, letting go. Two simple words, but for many they carry an enormous weight. Letting go means releasing something you once held tightly. Maybe a dream, a relationship, a plan, or even control over how your life should look. It's not easy. We're taught from an early age to fight, to hold on, to push through, to never give up. So when the moment comes where the wisest thing you can do is open your hands and release something to God, it can feel like failure, but in reality it's freedom. There's a powerful shift that happens when you finally come to the end of your striving. You've tried everything you know to do. You've prayed, pushed, planned, and still the outcome isn't changing. That's often the moment we're faced with a choice, to keep forcing what's not working, or to surrender it to the one who sees more than we do. Letting go is not about abandoning hope. It's about placing hope in a better place. Lie. It's about trading anxiety for assurance. Not assurance in your ability to fix everything, but assurance in God's ability to handle what you cannot. When you let go, you're not giving up. You're giving it over. You're acknowledging that your hands are not the safest place for your future, your relationships, your unanswered questions. And when you do this, truly release your grip, something incredible happens. Peace begins to fill the space that fear once occupied. Where once there was tension in your chest, sleepless nights, racing thoughts, and emotional exhaustion, there's now room for quiet, for stillness, for the kind of rest that comes when you know someone far greater is carrying what you once tried to hold alone. Peace is not found in having all the answers. It's found in knowing you don't have to. It's found in the gentle, steady trust that even if everything feels uncertain to you, nothing is uncertain to God. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop controlling. It means you choose trust over turmoil. You stop micromanaging outcomes and start believing that God is both aware and active, even when it seems like nothing is moving. This kind of surrender isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it happens quietly, in moments no one else sees. A silent prayer, whispered in the dark. A decision to stop fighting for something God is clearly closing the door on. A breath you didn't know you were holding, finally released. These moments are sacred. They are where transformation begins. Because letting go doesn't just change your circumstances, it changes you. Letting go also exposes what we've been relying on for our sense of security. Many times it reveals that we've been trusting more in our plans than in God's presence. That we've been measuring peace by how in control we feel, rather than how surrendered we are. The truth is, control is a heavy burden to carry. It wasn't meant for us. We weren't created to be the masters of the universe. We were created to walk in step with the one who is. There is deep wisdom in choosing surrender. Not as a last resort, but as a first response. Imagine what your life could look like if you stopped gripping so tightly to every outcome. What if you could truly say, God, I don't know how this ends, but I know you are good and that is enough for me. That kind of heart posture doesn't just invite peace, it anchors you in it. Of course, letting go doesn't mean you become passive. Doesn't mean you stop working hard, making decisions, or using wisdom. It simply means you stop operating from fear. You stop trying to manipulate results, fearing that if you don't hold it all together, everything will fall apart. Because the truth is, if it depends entirely on your effort to succeed, it's not sustainable. But if it's rooted in God's wisdom and grace, then you can rest, knowing He is working all things together for your good, even the things you don't understand. There will be moments when you have to let go, again and again. That's okay. Surrender is not a one-time event. It's a daily decision. Some days it's easier than others. Some days you'll have to remind yourself every hour that God's plan is better than yours. But over time, your hands will loosen, your heart will soften, and peace will settle in, not because your situation is resolved, but because your soul is. In the end, letting go is one of the most powerful acts of faith you can make. It's standing in the middle of the storm and saying, even here, even now, I choose trust. It's finding peace, not in the absence of problems, but in the presence of the one who walks with you through them. And as you let go, you will find something beautiful. The more you release, the more God reveals. The more you loosen your grip, the more you experience the depth of His grace, the strength of His timing, and the unshakable peace that only surrender can bring. To let go. Not because it's easy, but because it's holy. And in that sacred surrender, peace will meet you, right where you are. We often associate faith with clarity, as though believing deeply should come with a certainty of results, clear signs, and visible outcomes. But the truth is, faith rarely grows in places of complete understanding. It thrives in the soil of uncertainty, in the spaces where nothing makes sense, where the path is dark, and where the answers are nowhere to be found. That's where real faith is born. Not the kind of faith that depends on feelings or outcomes, but the kind that clings to trust when everything else falls away. Uncertainty is uncomfortable. It challenges our instinct to know, to predict, to plan, and to control. We like to map things out, to set timelines, to expect things to unfold in a certain way. And when that doesn't happen, it can feel like everything is unraveling. But what if that unraveling is exactly what's needed to expose the parts of us that were never meant to be the source of our peace? What if the places of not knowing are the very spaces where faith can breathe and grow. There is something incredibly powerful that happens when you walk through seasons of life where the future is foggy and the next step is uncertain. In those moments, you begin to learn that faith is not just believing that God can do something. It's trusting Him, even if He doesn't. Even if it takes longer than expected. Even if the answer looks different than what you prayed for. Faith becomes less about outcomes and more about intimacy. Less about rescue and more about relationship. And you are forced to let go of your own understanding when there's no GPS for the path ahead. You begin to listen more closely for God's whisper. You start to realize that guidance doesn't always come as a shout. It often comes as a still, small voice. And you begin to sense that your peace doesn't come from having all the facts. It comes from trusting the one who does. In uncertainty, our vision narrows. We're no longer looking years ahead. We're just trying to make it through the day or even the next hour. But that's where God meets us. In the present. In the now. And He gives us just enough light for the next step. Not the whole journey. That's intentional. Because if we saw everything laid out in front of us, we'd be tempted to trust the map instead of the maker. God is not in the business of giving us a formula. He gives us Him. Faith and uncertainty also teaches us humility. It strips us of the illusion that we're in control. It humbles us enough to say, I don't know, but I believe. It brings us to a place where we recognize our limitations, not in shame, but in freedom. Because when we finally acknowledge that we don't have all the answers, we can rest in the one who does. And in that rest, we discover strength we didn't know we had. There's a deep beauty in trusting God when nothing around you confirms that trust. When the doors are closed, when the reports are discouraging, when the people you counted on walk away, and still you choose to believe. That's when your faith becomes real. That's when it stops being a theory and becomes a lifeline. But when you believe in the middle of the storm, that's when faith becomes a fire that cannot be quenched. Uncertainty also invites us to let go of comparison. When you don't know what's ahead for you, it's tempting to look at others and wonder why their path seems smoother or clearer. But faith teaches you to keep your eyes on your own lane, to walk with God, not with expectations drawn from someone else's journey. Everyone has their own wilderness, their own unknowns, and God is doing something unique in your story. Even if you can't see it yet, as your faith grows in these uncertain seasons, so does your character. You become more resilient, more compassionate, more tuned in to what really matters. You start letting go of what's shallow and superficial, and you begin clinging to what's eternal. You stop depending on the applause of people and start depending on the approval of God. You stop needing guarantees and start living by grace. You may not realize it while you're in it, but later you'll look back and see that it was in the uncertainty that you truly learned to walk by faith. That's where you discovered how to listen, how to trust, how to wait, and how to hope against all odds. And you'll realize that God was never far. He was simply teaching you how to lean on Him more than ever before. So if you're walking through uncertainty today, if the road ahead is unclear, if you're waiting on an answer, a direction, or a sign, take heart. You are not lost. You are being led. Even if your steps feel shaky, even if your confidence is thin, your faith is being refined, and one day the fog will lift, the path will make sense, the pieces will come together. But until then, let your faith flourish, not in what you can see, but in who you know. Because that kind of faith, it can carry you through anything. There is a particular kind of silence that tests the human heart. The silence that follows a prayer, a cry, a plea, when you're met with no immediate response. It's the kind of silence that makes you wonder if you've been forgotten, if your words have vanished into the air, or if somehow you've missed a sign, a signal, a voice. This is where many faith journeys falter, not in chaos, not in tragedy, but in stillness, in the quiet waiting room of life where nothing seems to be happening. But trust is not built when everything makes sense. It is not strengthened by constant reassurance or visible progress. Trust is forged in the silence. It is in those moments when heaven seems quiet that your faith is stretched and deepened. When you cannot hear, see, or feel a response, yet you continue to believe, that's where the foundation of true trust is laid. We often confuse God's silence with absence. But silence is not a sign that he has walked away. It is often an invitation to draw nearer, to listen more closely, to lean into a deeper level of intimacy with him. In silence, we learn to stop relying on external signs and start developing internal certainty. We stop measuring God's nearness by what he does. This process is not comfortable. It strips away superficial faith, the kind built on feelings or quick answers, and replaces it with something rooted and unshakable. Trust born in silence is the kind that stands when storms come, because it was formed when nothing seems certain. It's a kind of faith that doesn't need signs to stay strong, and doesn't fall apart when the answers don't come quickly. Sometimes God allows the silence because he wants to do something in you before he does something for you. He may be quiet because he's leading you into maturity, into a place where your confidence in him is not based on the constant affirmation of blessings, but the quiet knowledge that his heart is always good, even when his hand is hidden. We also learn in silence that God is not obligated to perform according to our timeline. He's not a vending machine that delivers on demand. He is a Father who knows what we need, when we need it, and how best to provide it, even when we don't understand. Silence teaches us to wait, not as those abandoned, but as those entrusted with a deeper kind of strength. In the silence, we also confront our illusions of control. We face our impatience, our fears, our questions. And this is where real growth begins. Not when we escape silence, but when we embrace it. When we stop trying to rush through it and start asking, what are you showing me here, God? Even if the answer doesn't come right away, the question itself keeps your heart open, humble, and connected. Eventually, we begin to understand that silence is not a wall. It's a womb. It's not a punishment. It's a preparation. What God is growing in you in the quiet will one day come forth with strength and clarity. And when that moment arrives, you will look back and realize that the silence didn't break you. It built you. It formed a kind of trust that's not shaken by certainties, because it was born in the absence of certainty. So if you find yourself in the middle of silence, don't rush out of it. Don't fill it with noise, distraction, or despair. Sit with it. Listen in it. Let it shape your trust, because trust that is born in silence is trust that endures forever. Life rarely unfolds the way we expect. We plan, predict, and prepare, yet we constantly encounter detours, delays, and redirections. When things don't go our way, we often respond with confusion or disappointment. But what if the disruption is not a mistake? What if it's a mercy in disguise? What if the road you didn't choose is actually the road God designed for you? We love to quote the verse, "His ways are higher than our ways, and His thoughts are higher than our thoughts." But living that truth is much harder than saying it. It means accepting that we don't always get to understand what God is doing. It means acknowledging that our limited perspective can't comprehend the full picture He sees. And yet it also means that we are never left to navigate life alone. God sees what we cannot. He sees the beginning, the middle, and the end all at once. We only see one frame of a much larger film. From our point of view, certain things look like failures or setbacks. But from His vantage point, they are strategic redirections, necessary pauses, or hidden protections. What we call wrong turns may actually be divine rerouting. There's deep comfort in knowing that we don't have to figure everything out. We don't have to carry the pressure of perfect choices or flawless plans. God isn't asking us to be omniscient. He's asking us to be obedient, to trust that even when the road curves unexpectedly, it's not off course and still under His direction. Sometimes what we think we need is not what we truly need. And sometimes what we resist the most is what grows us the most. God's way is not about convenience. It's about transformation. He is not merely trying to give you a better life. He's shaping you into a person who reflects His heart, His character, and His strength. When we say God's way is higher, we are choosing to believe that He doesn't just see further than us, He knows better than us. And His better is not just marginally better, it is infinitely wiser, kinder, and more enduring than anything we could imagine. His plan isn't just good for today, it's good for eternity. That doesn't mean the higher way is always the easier way. In fact, it often feels harder. It may require sacrifice, letting go of control, or embracing uncertainty. But peace doesn't come from walking the easiest path. It comes from walking the right path, the one He designed, not the one we demanded. As you move through life, you'll begin to see patterns. The doors that closed led you to better ones. The disappointments taught you resilience. The detours showed you sides of God you would have never seen if everything had gone according to plan. Over time, your faith will be less about having everything figured out and more about trusting the one who already has. So, let His way be enough for you, even when it doesn't make sense, even when it stretches you, even when it asks you to let go of something you thought you needed. His way is higher, not because it's unreachable, but because it lifts you. It takes you places your way never could, and it roots you in a peace that doesn't depend on perfect understanding, but on perfect trust. You don't have to know it all to take the next step. You just have to trust the one who does. And as you do, you'll find that His higher way leads not only to better outcomes, but to a deeper you, a wiser you, a freer you. Because His way is not just higher for the sake of being different. It is higher for the sake of love. and love always leads us home. There comes a time in every person's journey when things simply stop making sense. Despite our best intentions, careful planning, and deep prayers, the path becomes foggy. The outcomes don't match our expectations, and the timing feels off. This is where trust becomes more than a concept. It becomes a choice. And it's in these moments when logic fails and answers are absent. The trust must rise above our understanding. Trusting God doesn't mean you will always understand what He's doing. In fact, most of the time you won't. He sees the full picture. We see only a corner of the canvas. He's not obligated to explain every detail, and still, He invites us into a relationship where faith is not built on explanations but on His unchanging character. This is one of the most difficult realities of faith, to believe when you don't see, to move when you don't feel, and to rest when you don't understand. Human nature craves certainty. We want reasons. We want closure. We want to connect the dots so everything fits neatly into a story we can explain. But God often does His deepest work in the places where there are no immediate explanations. The silence, the delays, the unexpected detours, they are not evidence that God is absent. They are invitations to lean not on our own understanding, but to acknowledge Him in all our ways and allow Him to direct our path. When we limit our trust to only what makes sense to us, we end up building a fragile faith. But when we trust beyond what we understand, we begin to build a foundation that stands strong even when everything around us is shifting. That's when we step into peace that surpasses understanding, not because we figured everything out, but because we handed everything over. To trust God beyond understanding means to believe that His intentions are always good, even when the outcome doesn't feel good. It means trusting His heart when you cannot trace His hand. It means holding on to the truth that He is for you, not against you, even in the mystery. And yes, this kind of trust is costly. It will cost your pride, your plans, your desire to control, but it will give you something far greater in return: rest, perspective, and a deepening awareness of God's faithfulness. God never promised that we would understand everything, but He did promise that He would never leave us. So when you're faced with situations that don't add up, choose to lean into the God who never changes. He is not asking you to understand the process. He is asking you to trust the person behind it. And when you do, you'll discover a security that no human logic can provide, and a peace that no circumstance can shake. In a world obsessed with speed, acceleration is often mistaken for progress. Faster is seen as better. We race toward goals, chase deadlines, and measure our worth by how quickly things fall into place. But in God's design, it is not acceleration that brings fulfillment. It is alignment. When our lives align with His timing, His will, and His purpose, there is a beauty and flow that no amount of rushing can replicate. We often ask God to move faster. Open the door now. Change the situation today. Bring the answer quickly. But rarely do we pause to ask, am I aligned with what you're doing, Lord? Because the truth is, God is not moved by our deadlines. He's moved by His divine design. And if He withholds something, it's never out of neglect. It's out of perfect alignment. There are blessings that are delayed, not because they're denied, but because we are not yet in position to receive them. Just like the moon aligns with the sun to reflect light, we must align with God's direction to reflect His will for our lives. When we step into alignment, we don't have to strive, chase, or panic. We flow. We walk with purpose, knowing that when the time is right, God will do what only He can do. Acceleration often tempts us to take shortcuts. We compromise integrity for speed. We trade character for achievement. But alignment invites us to grow, not just externally, but internally. It reminds us that who we are becoming is more important than how fast we're getting somewhere. It protects us from premature success and prepares us for lasting impact. Waiting in alignment may feel slow, but it is rich. It is the space where God prepares the soil of our hearts so that when the seed of His promise finally sprouts, it flourishes. And while the world may not understand the pace of divine alignment, those who walk in it experience a peace that's not available in the rush. So choose alignment over acceleration. Stay in step with God even when it feels like everyone else is moving faster. Because when your life is aligned with Him, His timing becomes your blessing. And what He builds slowly, He sustains deeply. When we fix our eyes solely on the outcome, we miss the treasure buried in the process. The journey itself, full of ups and downs, waiting and wondering, is where some of God's most generous gifts are given. These gifts don't always come wrapped in clarity or celebration. Sometimes they are disguised as delays, disruptions, or even disappointments. But make no mistake, there is a gift in the process. The process is where transformation happens. It's where you learn to pray deeper, to stand stronger, and to love God, not just for what He gives, but for who He is. In the process, you become someone new. You begin to see the world differently. You let go of shallow faith and start cultivating trust that's rooted in experience. And that is a priceless gift. God is more interested in your development than your destination. He's shaping your character while you wait. He's refining your motives, testing your resilience, and anchoring your soul. The process is where you discover endurance, where your spiritual muscles are stretched, and where you learn that God's presence is more valuable than any promise you're waiting for. Often we think the end result is the reward, but many who have reached their destination will tell you the real reward was in what they learned on the way. It's in the moments where you didn't quit, when you kept believing, even with tears in your eyes. It's in the realization that God was working ways you couldn't see, orchestrating things behind the scenes, guiding your steps, even when you felt lost. There is a sacredness to the slow, often painful process. It humbles you. It teaches you to let go of perfection. It deepens your empathy for others. And most of all, it draws you closer to God. The more time you spend in the process, the more you realize it's not about just getting to a place of breakthrough. It's about becoming someone who can carry the blessing with grace and wisdom. But if you find yourself in the middle of a long, uncertain journey, don't rush past it. Don't despise it. Ask God to help you see the gift hidden inside. Because when the promise finally comes, it won't be the only thing you celebrate. You'll also celebrate who you became in the waiting, and how the process, though difficult, shaped your soul in the most beautiful way. Today, let this be more than words. Let it be a shift. Stop asking why not yet, and start saying, God, I'm ready on your term. God's timing is not just perfect, it's wise, it's intentional, it's holy. So let go of the anxiety, the striving, the endless questions, and trust the one who knows the end from the beginning. Because when you let go, truly let go, you'll find that what comes to you in God's time is always worth the wait.